from one dysfunctional story to much less dysfunctional, but still interesting, all the same story involving everyone's royal black family, the Obamas,
That's right.
black
Black love.
royalty, yeah, the kings and queens, the shining beacons for the example of who we want to be. And,
Yes.
to be honest with you, given what we just got finished talking about, they are at this point. Um, depending on how cynical you've gotten with all this
Mm,
stuff.
mhm.
But, Barack Obama, is talking, doing, I don't know what it is that he is on that has him doing interviews as of late, but he's recently been talking about, his experience being president and the strain that this placed on his marriage. And he said that as a result of him being a two-term president, he came out of his presidency in a marriage deficit to his wife, Michelle Obama, who at one point didn't really think too highly of him because while he was president. And so he is, talking about this stuff and saying, hey, look, man, everything in all rainbows and unicorns, even the best, most solid of relationships go through turmoil. Ours was no different. And now that I am no longer president, it gives me the opportunity and the bandwidth to try and get back in her good graces as much as possible. So this says Barack Obama says he's in deep deficit with wife Michelle after presidency.
Hmm.
The marriage of former President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama met some hurdles after his two terms. On Thursday, which was April the 3rd, the 44th U.S. president held a speaking engagement with Hamilton College President Stephen Tepper and spoke about the difficulties of improving his marriage post-presidency. According to the Daily Beast, Obama, who's been married to the former First Lady for 33 years, was in a deep deficit with his wife. The couple shares two daughters, Malia, 26, and Sasha, 23. So I've been trying to dig myself out of that hole by doing occasionally fun things, Obama told Tepper. Last January, Mrs. Obama appeared on the podcast On Purpose with Jay Shetty and shared that she didn't want fans to consider her marriage ideal. I don't want people looking at me and Barack like hashtag couple goals and not know that no, there are some broken things that happen even in the best of marriages. But with over 30 years of marriage, Mrs. Obama said that the good has outweighed their issues. 2 years before, Mrs. Obama expressed on CBS Mornings that she couldn't stand her husband during a decade of marriage, which the public speculated was when Obama was president. In 2023, Obama addressed his wife's comments, saying that it helps to be out of the White House. So this particular clip is actually from 2023, not from very recently. But here is Barack speaking on this back in 2023.
Your wife Michelle on the show, and she had mentioned that for about 10 years of the marriage, she really didn't like you.
Oh man.
So asking for a friend, how do you get back in good grace again for a friend? You got a pen so I can take some notes.
Let me just say this. It sure helps to be out of the White House. And to have a little more time with her.
Right.
What also helps though about children. And
Yeah.
I don't know about your spouse, Michelle, when our girls were growing up, that was priority number 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Of course.
And so I did not fully appreciate, I think, as engaged of a father as I was, the degree of stress and tension for her, knowing that not just me and Michelle were under scrutiny and in this strange environment, but that we were raising our daughters,
of course,
in a kind of situation that just wasn't normal. Now that they're doing good,
yeah,
she is a little more forgiving of all my flaws. She says, what she's told me is, looking back, you did okay as a dad.
Yeah.
And if I pass that test, then she'll forgive me most of my other foibles.
Interesting.
And there you have it. So that particular interview was from 2023, but what brought this story back up was his appearance at Hamilton College President at the speaking engagement with Hamilton College President Steve Tepper, where this came back up. So I think that was the end of it. Yeah. So that was the end of that. So what do you think about that, bro? What do you think about this revelation that for a decade, and I'm pretty sure some of this is tongue in cheek, but for a decade, Michelle Obama couldn't stand Barack, and now Barack is in a deficit trying to make up for lost time.
For the iconic family that embodies Black love, I don't care for this level of conversation from this group. Here's why. Every president has been married. I haven't heard any other president wife speak, any other first lady speak on their relationship. Never heard it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why we have to be in Barack's and Michelle's bedroom.
I can tell you why.
Yeah, I would love to hear.
No, go ahead. I'm pretty sure you have your own theory, but I would
love to hear it. So, but I'm just saying. But as far as this conversation goes, that's why I don't care for it. I don't want to know what they had going on. Does it make sense? Yeah, it makes sense in the sense that, this guy is being the president of the United States, which, it is not a normal job. There's only been 40 something of them. There's only one going at a time. So, it's a very unique position. Yes, you're raising daughters. So there has to be a level of understanding. But this is the president of the United States. So I'm pretty sure there's assistants, other people, and chefs. I mean, you ain't got to cook. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got to do nothing. I don't know how hard it was to raise them when you got the Secret Service right next to you. Now, I know raising your kids is hard, but, that mama that really got to raise the kids by herself, with the husband or whatever, catching the bus to go get groceries, and that's a real struggle. So their situation, everybody's on this, their own thing, but I think it's too overblown. It's too overblown. I don't need to hear about it. It wasn't that serious. It can't be that serious. But last thing I say before I let you go, they've been playing around with this thing that they're not happy. There's been a lot of that conversation going on lately.
Very weird.
What'd you say?
I said it's very weird.
Yeah. And I think it was Orange Man's inauguration, and or something like that, and all the ex-presidents that were still alive were there, and their wives were there. But then Obama shows up by himself, and it's the streets are sitting there going, well, Michelle don't like Orange Man, so that's why she didn't show up. But every other first lady did. So why aren't you? Why is the Cosby of all presidents for Black America walking out there by himself? So it's too much of that rigmarole going on for me. I don't care for it. And I would love to hear what you think about that, bro. But what are your thoughts, man, on Barack Hussein Obama running around here saying that, hey, man, my wife wasn't happy with me. I was operating at a deficit.
Right.
What are your thoughts, man?
You raise a good point. A couple things, because I actually didn't think to go in that direction initially until you said that. But I do have a working theory on why they're unmuting so much when it comes to the nature of their marriage. Mm-hmm. As you said, and you're right, there's only been 45 presidents. Mm-hmm. I would have to go. I'm not going to speak out of turn and say they've all been married. I don't know. I'm assuming they were all married, but I don't. I got to crack open my history book and look and see Okay, this was their
Somebody in the
style.
comment section saying President 32 was not.
Right. Yeah. So I don't because I can't say that with certainty. I'm just gonna say the vast majority of them. It's almost a prerequisite, right? President of the United States, be a family man, be somebody who's married. And yes, I'm saying man because thus far there have only been men who have been president. So get off my back. I'm not trying to suggest only men should be president, but that has been what has happened thus far. The vast majority of them have been married. Coming out of their presidency, there's not been this commentary and dissection and general interest into the intimacies and the intricacies of their respective marriages. When the term is over, the term is over, and that's just it, right? And there's been other Democratic presidents and all of this kind of stuff. There's only been interest whenever there's scandal, a la the Clintons. But if you remove scandal from the equation, it is what it is. They're married, and we move on. The reason why I think there's so much interest in them is because of the current state of the Black family. It's in complete and utter disarray. So, why do you think if you scour the internet enough, the dating and relationship podcasts, all of the dating content and commentary on the internet, all of the men's manosphere podcasts and the Fresh and Fit shows and the We in Miami shows, the 20 versus 1 thing and the pop and the pop and the pop the balloon stuff and all that, right? If you're looking at any of this stuff, you're mostly seeing people from the community in this content, by and large. Now, don't get me wrong, the degradation of the family structure is something that is impacting all cultures. It is impacting all races. It's impacting all ethnicities. If you have ingratiated yourself in westernized civilization, you're being affected by this. So this is something that's happening to everybody. But I personally believe it is disproportionately impacting Black people in America more than other groups. Some of that has to do with statistics because our numbers are the lowest amongst most minority groups at this point. And so any sort of societal observation is going to have a greater disproportionate effect because you're dealing with smaller numbers overall. You're dealing with a smaller sample size. So some of that is stats and numbers and statistics, but a lot of it I also believe is cultural. And I can't really put my finger on it, but I've kind of expressed to you before, when we've talked about this, I've said to myself, well, why do we see more basketball players and football players being involved with Aisha Howards of the world, but you don't see as many baseball players and hockey players or non-Black football players dealing with the same kind of scandalous stuff? It's always Tyreek Hill or Anthony Edwards or Lil Baby, you know what I'm saying? James Harden. It's always people who look like us. But I can look in the NFL and Trevor Lawrence seems to be good with marriage and family. Matthew Stafford seems to be good with marriage and family. You know what I'm saying? People like this, they just seem to be good with marriage and family. It doesn't seem to bother them. So I think statistics have something to do with this, and I think culture has something to do with this. I can explain the statistics. Can't quite put my finger on the cultural aspect of it, but I do know what I'm seeing, and I'm not imagining this stuff. There's something going on with us where we are being more greatly impacted by messages and consumerism and all of these various other environmental things that are impacting and causing the degradation of the family structure. And I think because we are being more impacted by the degradation of the family structure, we look to certain symbols and things that we can hold on to as hope that these things can be preserved and maintained. And I think for a lot of us, Obamas represent that. They represent that. And so they want to dig into what makes their marriage. We want to dig into what makes their marriage work. What makes it last? How do you deal with the challenges and the trials and tribulations? Because maybe we can use that as an example of what we can carry back for ourselves to figure out ways that we can preserve it for ourselves, because otherwise it's in complete and utter disarray. And again, other cultures and impact and races and ethnicities and groups and demographics are being impacted by the same stuff, but there's a cultural aspect of this that is impacting us more than other groups of people, from what I can tell. And when you combine that with the numbers, we have what I theorize is a greater degradation of the family unit that is hitting our community more than other communities.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think we care so much about what they got going on. It's why I think, remember, I don't know if you remember this, but for the longest time, Michael B. Jordan, there was just constant, the internet was obsessed with who he was dating. And it's why there was, it was almost like it was a holiday when it went public that he was dating Lori Harvey, because he was with a black girl. So people were so relieved and happy to discover that this desirable black man wasn't with a non-black woman, he was with a black woman, because it symbolized some sort of a representation of what could be when it comes to retaining what we have left of the black family structure. So we need examples of this to cling to in order to know that we can preserve something that is being utterly degraded with each passing day and year and moment. And so we don't got, Michael B. Jordan, he's a private guy, which I respect about him. So now that the Lori Harvey thing is done, nobody really knows who he's with, but he went through that firestorm. And I believe he went through that firestorm for that reason. And the Obamas, I wouldn't call what the Obamas have experienced a firestorm, because they seem to be voluntarily letting people in, but it's nevertheless the same dynamic, because they represent for a lot of the community an example of how to retain the black family structure, because there's so little examples of it elsewhere to look at, whether we're talking about celebrities, high profile people, or people on the streets, civilians. So that's why I think that there's so much interest in it. And to touch on just, the situation at large with them two in particular, I credit them for being able to work through that. And I'll bring it back to something that you've talked about routinely, which is not letting certain things come in the way of breaking up the family unit, because breaking up the family unit does more harm than good. So, I think in this era where we're dealing with individual agency and just individualism in general, everything is me centric. Nothing is about community or family. It's all about me, I. What's best for me? What do I want? What do I deserve? Deserve is such a strong word, but a lot of people these days, men and women, are always like, this is what I want, and this is what I'm entitled to, and this is what I deserve. And if I don't get that, I'm not going to commit to something. And if I have committed to something and I stop getting it, I'm going to look for a way out, because I feel like I deserve better. I'm not happy. And so in lieu of that kind of thought process, you get families breaking up over things that need to be worked out. And when the family breaks up, you got nothing. What did Jay-Z say? Nobody wins when the family feuds. And that's why I commend this without digging too much into their personal lives, because quite frankly, I don't give a damn. I really don't care. but I think the reason why other people care is because of all of this stuff swirling around it, what it potentially symbolizes. So, it's like, if they're able to work through that, it can perhaps be emblematic of the importance of not allowing the family to feud, of not allowing the family to break up and dissolve over ridiculous stuff. And so maybe that's also why there's so much interest in this. But yeah, preserve the family, keep it going. You can't stand the guy for 8 years. He's running the country. So what? Deal with it. It is what it is. And that is symbolic of other situations where there's a strain. All of a sudden, somebody is not happy or unfulfilled or not satisfied. And you think inwardly, selfishly, about how to be able to get that part of yourself back. And in your quest to try to get part of that back, you break up the family. And at the end of the day, was it really worth it? In my opinion, no. But this is what we have going on when everything is hyper focused on individualism and what a person, an individual, deserves or otherwise is entitled to. So that's kind of my big picture take on that. That's kind of why I think people are so interested in them and what they got going on, and why they may feel compelled to speak on it, even though I, for the most part, largely agree. Keep it close to the vest.
Yeah, fair point, bro. Didn't think about that, but when you said that though, it it made it. I have an answer for that. At least for me, as far as why people in our community are in this position, and it's because there isn't any tradition to hold on to. Period. Um, the traditions that Americans have, American Black people, to be specific, is 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 commercialism. It's industrialism, and there's nothing there that speaks to tribal knowledge, wisdom, understanding. Every part of that was going on has been, in my opinion, systematically dissolved. Uh, and you can speak. It also speaks to. You can see people that come from another country and they come to America, and generation one, generation two seem to have things figured out. But then the kids that came up Americanized are dropping the ball. And the reason being is because they're coming up in a country that doesn't honor their people's traditions. And so over year, generation over generation, there has been a systemic wearing down of values
Absolutely.
to the point where in the 90s when we were coming up, people were looking at Uncle Phil and Bill Cosby,
Carl Winslow.
Carl Power Bottom Carl Winslow, okay, as pinnacles of the Black community, people that we would look up to. Those were people's fathers. Which how do we get there? You know, so to the point where people got so used and they got conditioned to looking at, um, the devil's box and picking out people that they're gonna emulate their life after. It was no wonder that when Obama got in office and they see this man on the tube and his wife, all right, they immediately fell in love with that image. But this was a real image. This wasn't something that was, a Hollywood situation according to them. This was real Black love and Black president at that. So why not model themselves or hold them up like they held up Uncle Phil, Power Bottom, and what that boy name? Yeah, Carl Winslow and all that stuff, man. So so the lack of culture, real culture, the lack of rites of passage. See, you go in other communities, man. They got quinceañeras and
Correct.
they
Yes.
got bar
Right.
mitzvahs.
Right. Right.
They have rites of passage things going on,
Correct. Yeah.
and we don't have any of those things.
No.
And so we did though, and there's still places in the world where we're doing them. But right here, right now in America, our traditions are stem from consumerism and the industrial complex. So our rites of passage is buying fly fancy stuff. You turn a certain age, you get this kind of car. You wear these kind of shoes. You do this kind of that. That's not anything. That's literally the definition. If you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. So no wonder when there's certain images on TV, people fall for that. So valid point, bringing up that, since there is no real image or anything like that, that they gravitated towards this. And I'll take it a step further and say, hey, they was doing that in the 90s with characters from sitcoms.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it don't stop. So it will progressively get worse, and to the point now where people are so interested in who streamers are dating. You know what I'm saying? We asking Ruby Rose, was she, you know what I'm saying? What's her standards?
Well, that's how you know we've reached the point of no return. Because these individuals like that, they aren't doing anything that resembles even a shred or modicum of the word family doesn't even come out of a Ruby Rose's mouth.
No, not even close.
I saw something that I think I was sourcing topics for this week. I saw something that said she put something out, I believe, on Twitter saying that if a man, I gotta look for it because I don't want to quote it wrong, but it was something egregious. It was something to the effect of, if a man I'm talking to isn't prepared to pay for my hairdo, I know we won't make it that far, or something like that. And she did that in lieu of posting a screenshot of somebody cash apping her $500. So to your point, our culture is unabashedly consumerism.
100.
1 million trillion percent. It's why disproportionately so many of our desirable quote unquote women carry themselves transactionally when it comes to how they handle relationships.
Yes.
Because for them, they're not going to get marriage, they're not going to get family, they're not going to get commitment anyway. So I might as well quite literally whore myself out to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
Because I at least am looking out for my best interest when I'm doing this, which takes it back to the central point of individualism.
Yes.
And everyone's hyper obsession with themselves. So when you're constantly only consumed with what benefits you, you don't have enough bandwidth to consider what is best for family and community. You really don't. And it's conversations like this that I never thought that I would do this, but I find myself more and more nowadays wondering whether the communal setup really is better than nothing at all. You know what I'm saying? So when you defend the practicality of the Nick Cannon model, because you've never really defended Nick Cannon per se, but you've always defended the practicality inherent in that particular approach. And when you do that, I was always like, it's not really my thing. But the more and more I see stuff like this, the more and more I find myself reconsidering the pragmatism of it. Because otherwise, if that's the only semblance of community that we can come to, what choice do you have?
Exactly, dude.
Seriously. And at the end of the day, I harken back to my initial point. The reason why there is so much interest in the health of the marriage of these two people is because our community is dying literally from the inside out. We're infected with a virus that is destroying. It is literally the family structure is literally degrading year over year. And the reason why we care about what they got going on is because they represent the breakthrough science that could potentially free us from that virus, that can cure us.
Yes.
They represent the experimental drug that may be the cure for cancer. And so that's, people care just as much about that experimental drug as they do about them. It's the same dynamic. So I try to be optimistic with it, but our people are being impacted by this to a great degree, and I agree with you 100%. I do believe that when you don't have actual customs, like when you can't benefit from a country of origin, from a language of origin, and then you can't benefit from the customs which encompass that country and language of origin, you have to essentially make up culture on the fly.
Correct.
And so when you're making up culture on the fly, That's when rap becomes your culture.
Yes.
That's when hip hop becomes your culture.
Yes.
That's when Maybachs and red bottoms become your culture.
Yes.
And you're eroding actual family in the process of prioritizing materialism.
Yep.
So it's just one of those things, man. And I feel like they represent the counterintuitive point to that ideal. And it's
Hmm.
why people care so much about it. People care so much about it because they're screaming out really for help. Give us our experimental drug, because people want family more than they realize. Even the thoughtiest of the thoughts
Absolutely.
and the rest of these dudes running around in the streets paying for these women, paying for these BBL'd up chicks, they want family too. Like, we all want to bring it back to that. We just
Right.
don't know how, and we're going about getting it in all the wrong ways.
Yeah. 1,000, man. And last thing I'll say is that there's 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 like, if you're an American, there's only two ways you can live. Your culture can be the one who sells it to people, or your culture can be the ones who buy it from people. And right now we have been sold the idea of to be the consumer, and that's why we're in the predicament that we're in. Like I said, other countries, they'll come over here, they'll do their thing, and they are in the mindset of being the seller. Then over time, through conditioning, they are taught and trained to be the buyers. And so the cycle will eventually hit those cultures too. So we've just been here for the longest,
Right. Yeah.
and so we've been experiencing it year over year, and the trauma is building on itself. So yeah, I would just tell people, man, that just trace things back, man. Just do yourself a favor. Look back in history and see how we did carry ourselves. See what we believed in, see how we did things, see what our rites of passage were, and try to get back some semblance. Because the benefit of living in a world where there's the internet and all these things flying around, there's so much history out there.
Yeah.
There's so many books. I ain't talking about just YouTube videos either. And if you're not the reading type, there's plenty of audiobooks. All right, where you could just sit down and listen to history, and put yourself in the right state of mind. So the next time something materialistic pop up on your feed or something like that, you know that there's life outside of that. And there needs to be a re-education of our people on what it takes to be a people. And it starts with, like you said, abandoning what we've been sold, like hip hop and rap. And I would say adopting things that are a lot more traditional that we did historically before we lost our minds. So, yeah, man, whatever with the Obamas, man, I guess, more power to them, or good luck. But you know what I'm saying? But again, personally, bro, yeah, I don't care for them talking about their relationship. I guess they're just being real, keeping it 100. But that's another thing. Sometimes you don't need to keep it 100. Sometimes,
Yeah.
if especially if y'all know y'all are the beacon and the example for our people, there's no better way of being that beacon or example than to not let people know what's going on in y'all bedroom.
The dirty
Because
laundry.
the
Yeah.
dirty laundry, because
Yeah.
that's like you going around at work and telling everybody at work what you got going on in your house. Everybody gonna be looking at you crazy and talking sideways now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But Frank over there, an accountant, you know what I'm saying? He got the stuff going on, and he's not coming into the water cooler and telling everybody everything. So keep everything close to the vest and maintain that level of aura and respect. Some people could say, "Hey, man, they just showing us that they're just like us, man, and they can overcome." And that's fine. But I'm just saying, look at the other examples and conduct yourselves accordingly. I would say that.
Yeah. I think the reason why there's as much interest as it is because
Mm-hmm.
we all collectively can feel um the absence and lack of traditional values
100.
within community, the
Mhm.
complete and utter breakdown and degradation of the family structure, the erosion of it. And the reason why people care so much is because when you see examples of it, even if it isn't real, we nevertheless hold on to it as a signal of hope. So there's an optimism to be here. There's optimism in that because the hope means that people do want it and clamor for it,
Right.
even if we are going to just log off and go back to being insane tomorrow.
Yeah.
At least the presence of the hope is there. So it is what it is.
Yeah, man. You know, but let us know down in the comment section, y'all. What are your thoughts on Obama around here saying that he's on the outs? Well, he was on the outs with Michelle. But I guess over the years they were able to calm that down. But what are you guys' thoughts, man? Let us know down in the comment section.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Jamie Foxx Barack impression is funny.
He sounded just like Jamie. I was like, hey, man, you doing an Obama impersonation on yourself? Like, what the hell? Well, it helps to not be president.
Yeah.
Down, boy.